In 2287, the Gunners Mercenary Company was hired to recover schematics from an office building in the Back Bay of Boston. A party of over 50 mercenaries was dispatched to the old structure on the border of the Charles River Esplanade. Not long after they arrived, most of this force were dead or had been driven mad. Though the Gunners had known that this structure had once been property of the HalluciGen Corporation, had they known what HalluciGen had made before the war, they may have made the smart choice to stay away. I'm the Irresolute Cartographer, and this is the story of HalluciGen Inc. The United States of the Fallout universe was a very powerful and unstable nation. By the late 2070s, the war with the People's Republic of China had been raging for a decade. Shortages of food, fuel, and electricity led to widespread protests and rioting. With so much civil unrest, military and police forces were seeking new, non-lethal means of suppressing riots. In 2075, HalluciGen Inc. was founded to help meet this need. The company formulated and assessed all its products at their headquarters in Boston. The first and most famous of these products was HalluciGen Gas. Billed as a means of stopping a riot faster, more effectively, and more cleanly than any competitor's product, HalluciGen Gas was in fact a preemptive strike, a chemical agent provocateur that would turn peaceful protests into scenes of mass violence. When dispersed over a crowd, it would cause a massive release of adrenaline, triggering a fight or flight response. The crowd would then flee or turn on each other instead of attacking the target of the protests. The government or corporation using HalluciGen Gas could then claim in the media that the protesters were violent agitators looking for a fight, rather than peaceful protesters looking for a redress of their legitimate concerns. Unfortunately for those subjected to HalluciGen Gas, it caused such a violent release of adrenaline that the adrenal glands would rupture. Those few who managed to fight the effects of this release were generally beaten to death by those under its influence. Though HalluciGen attempted to refine their product and remove the permanent damage it caused, repeated redesigns of the chemical structure failed to fix it. Despite the danger inherent in the product, HalluciGen continued to sell their gas to governments and corporations across the eastern United States. Though HalluciGen was producing a product in a field with high demand, they were struggling financially. In the third quarter of 2077 alone, they faced a net operating loss of $1.8 billion. To fight their flagging fortunes, HalluciGen introduced 4 new products to their line. The first of these products was another riot suppressant gas they called Dispersant. Like HalluciGen Gas, Dispersant was marketed as an anti-riot product, but it caused fear, not violence. Unfortunately, this gas was also a bit too potent. In at least one test subject, the fear it caused seems to have been a permanent effect. They ran from the building, screaming at the sight of their own child in the lobby. After 2 days wandering the city, they were apprehended and institutionalized. Upset by this failure, Damien, the head of R&D, fired the designer of Dispersant. Along with chemical crowd control, HalluciGen was working on electrical crowd control in the form of Suppressor. Suppressor was meant to temporarily paralyze crowds of individuals, allowing the authorities to arrest protesters and rioters without any risk of harm to either side. Unfortunately, HalluciGen hadn't worked out the temporary side of temporarily paralyzing individuals, and the test subjects affected by Suppressor were soon confined to hospitals. The head of this project was a designer HalluciGen had scalped from another crowd control developer, Implied Hypnotics. Damien was furious that this project head, originally the lead engineer of the Mesmetron, had so far failed to produce a viable product. If Damien had bothered to do some thorough reading on the Mesmetron, he may have had a more realistic idea of what this designer could produce. The Mesmetron had a chance of causing its targets to frenzy, and could even cause the skull cavity of those affected to explode. Outside of crowd control, HalluciGen was working to diversify their catalog with devices like the Eradicator. The Eradicator was intended to serve as a handheld field decontaminator, capable of eliminating dangerous biochemical agents. While a test of this device indeed managed to cleanse the test chamber of an impressive 49 of 50 biochemical agents, it did so while blasting the test subjects with a lethal 5,100 rads of radiation, resulting in their bodies effectively disintegrating. Beyond this problem came the fact that this handheld device weighed in at 2 tons. Despite all the problems with these devices, HalluciGen continued to evaluate its chemicals and equipment on unwitting human test subjects in front of potential buyers. They advertised for these volunteers with innocuous flyers that invited the ignorant in with offers of starting a career in high-tech research. When the volunteers arrived in the lobby, they were given 8 forms to fill out and a bottle of sedative-laced water. Once they'd passed out, lab personnel were alerted and the subjects were carried into the test chambers. While most of these test subjects ended up dead or hospitalized, a few lucky individuals were subjected to HalluciGen's last innovation of 2077, Invisawave. Invisawave was claimed to be a breakthrough in invisibility technology, almost too amazing to be believed. A device capable of rendering individuals invisible without the need to wear a personal generator. Unfortunately for HalluciGen, an admiral who watched the demonstration of the technology did believe the claims and asked about the viability of creating stealth ships with Invisawave technology. I say that this is unfortunate for HalluciGen, as the Invisawave was a completely fraudulent technology. As Damien put it, your Invisawave is 5 mirrors, 2 hacked stealth boys, and a trapdoor. With these innovative technologies not working out as they hoped, HalluciGen mostly had to rely on HalluciGen gas for their revenue stream. When anti-automation riots erupted in Appalachia in early October 2077, CEO Eric Rice saw an opportunity. HalluciGen gas was used extensively by the National Guard in putting down violence in towns like Beckley, West Virginia. Not everyone in the area was so ready to gas the locals. When HalluciGen offered a sample of their gas to Vivian Garahan, CEO of Garahan Mining, she refused to use it, instead remarking that at her first opportunity, she would send the canister back to them with a message about where they could stick it. Unfortunately, she was in the minority. Later in October, after the riots in the south of Appalachia had been put down, the Associated Miners Union began protesting at the Poseidon Energy Power Plant in Charleston, West Virginia. Poseidon had recently replaced the plant's century-old coal-burning equipment with ultrasite-powered reactors. Unfortunately for the locals, they had also automated most of the on-site workers out of a job. After firing any remaining workers that joined the protest line, Brent Olson, the security director for the plant, requested the assistance of the National Guard. With the plant locked down and the National Guard outside, the safety of the plant was seemingly assured. The National Guard fired HalluciGen gas into the crowd of protesters. The plan, orchestrated by Poseidon, the military, and the government, was for the protesters to tear each other apart, giving the press a story about violent rioters. The plan could have hardly gone more wrong. The protesters didn't fight each other, they rushed the National Guard and tore their gas masks off. Without protection, the National Guard force was turned by the gas. Though the plant was locked down against entry, it was still under renovation, and one entrance had been left open. The crowd stormed the facility and murdered anyone they came across. In his last moments, the security director attempted to make sure that the true story of events was known, pointing to his computer as a source of proof of the military-industrial complex's plan, but this terminal was remotely wiped. Back in Boston, Eric Rice had one final plan to put HalluciGen on the path to financial solvency: the Scythe program. Like Mark Wilson, president of Wilson Automatoys, Eric Rice was planning to take his corporation from cooperation with the federal government to integration with it. In the case of Wilson Automatoys, this had entailed the toy maker switching their production lines to primarily manufacturing landmines. As to what Colonel Nelson would have HalluciGen make, we'll never know, as their meeting was scheduled for Monday, October 25th, 2077. Given the fact that R&D needed to find a way to make 200 working Invisawave devices by December, it could be seen as lucky for HalluciGen that the world ended on Saturday, October 23rd, 2077. After the war, the use of HalluciGen gas enjoyed a brief resurgence in Appalachia in the 2080s when it became a resource to the Mistresses of Mystery. In the years before the war, Shannon Rivers of Beckley, West Virginia, had been the voice actress for the comic book heroine the Mistress of Mystery. In 2077, it was announced that the Mistress would be making the move from radio to television. Intent on continuing to play the character she had embodied for years, Miss Rivers trained exhaustively, honing the same skills used by her fictional counterpart. She traveled to Boston in mid-October 2077, visiting the Hubris Comics building just blocks from the HalluciGen Inc. headquarters. In the end, she was passed over for the role for a younger actress. Though she was initially upset by this ignoble end to her acting career, the fact that she was home with her family when the bombs came down eased her pain. In the years after the war, Miss Rivers put her training to the test and brought the Mistress of Mystery to life, fighting raiders to keep her family safe. As the raider threat grew, she trained an entire generation of Mistresses of Mystery. I created an entire video dedicated to their order if you're interested in learning more about Shannon Rivers and her Order of Mysteries. For this video, it should suffice to say that her husband, Frederick Rivers, was a genius inventor who created a gadget for his wife that he called the Phantom device that used HalluciGen gas. Along with this, he experimented with HalluciGen gas grenades, an idea that the sole survivor can use just as the vault dwellers of Appalachia did nearly 2 centuries prior. Around 185 years after the dwellers of Vault 76 left their home on Reclamation Day 2102, we come to the story that we opened with, the attempted heist of HalluciGen Inc's headquarters by the Gunners Mercenary Company. In 2287, the Gunners were one of the strongest factions in the Commonwealth. Brutal, violent, and ruthless, the Gunners would take any job. In the fall of 2287, an unknown customer hired the Gunners to recover copies of schematics from HalluciGen Inc. Specifically, the customer wanted information on the Invisiwave and the Eradicator. To this end, the Gunners dispatched an advanced squad to the Esplanade. This party set up a local headquarters in the Marlborough House just down the street from HalluciGen's headquarters. From there, they scoped out the area and prepared for the rest of the team. When the larger party arrived, more than 50 gunners moved on the structure. After establishing a defensive perimeter, they pushed inside. Not long after this, the gunners breached the lab, resulting in the release of hallucinogen gas. The entire party lost their minds. While the flood of adrenaline put some into the flight side of fight or flight, most of them were put down by their fighting compatriots. The gunner commander was forced to put down 2 subordinates that had entered the lab with him. While the rest of the gunners fought a running battle against each other, the commander locked himself in the lab with the hope of waiting for the effects of the gas to fade. Only one of the flight-minded gunners survived. He can be found at the base of a flight of stairs, screaming about hallucinated bugs, cats, and a dead person named Davy. Aside from general exploration of the Commonwealth or attempting the extermination of the Gunners Mercenary Company, there are 2 other reasons that the sole survivor may have come to HalluciGen Inc's headquarters. The first of these relates to the opening of another vault, Vault 88. When the sole survivor of Vault 111 managed to open Vault 88 and dig through the rubble within, they met the vault's only living occupant, Overseer Valerie Barstow. A ghoul, Valerie was the original overseer of the vault and had been trapped inside the incomplete vault for the past 210 years. Intent on continuing her work for Vault-Tec, Overseer Barstow tasked the sole survivor with the recovery of a chemical formula from HalluciGen, to whom Vault-Tec had contracted its development. This chemical, designed to elicit short-term euphoria in the imbibers as required for a Vault experiment, was among the last products created by HalluciGen. Of course, in typical Vault-Tec fashion, though the chemical was considered to be non-addictive, their researchers did note that coming down from the chemical produced a depressive state. Though HalluciGen had completed their work, the war preceded the delivery of the formula to the vault down in Quincy. Newly recruited vault dwellers approve of the effect the chemical creates, but appear to have a reduced awareness of reality while under its effects. The other reason the sole survivor may visit HalluciGen Inc's headquarters is on the behalf of Fred Allen of Goodneighbor. Fred Allen wants the sole survivor to recover something from within the HalluciGen Inc. building. That something is a hallucinogen gas canister. Returning this canister to Fred yields either 200 or 400 caps, depending on how much was agreed to. Alright, that about does it for the narrative, but I have a few notes before closing things out. First, there's conflicting information on when HalluciGen Inc. was founded. When demonstrating the effects of hallucinogen gas for visiting dignitaries, an automated announcement claims, "HalluciGen gas, reliable crowd control since 2055. This implies that the company has existed since at least 2055, 22 years prior. Meanwhile, the accounting department was in the process of creating a document that said otherwise. The third quarter financial report says, HalluciGen Inc., now in its 3rd year of operation, aspires to be the world leader in cutting-edge non-lethal technology for police and military use. The demonstration says 22 years, the financial reports say 3. The real number is likely 3 for the following reasons. A. Between the 2 claims, the financial report is likely to be subject to more external legal scrutiny. Even when CEO Eric Rice ordered the accounting department to rewrite the report to be more positive, the accountant used more apparently positive yet legitimate data, the company's earnings, instead of more apparently negative yet legitimate data, the company's operating losses. Both versions claim HalluciGen is in its 3rd year of operation. B. Hallucinogen gas is incredibly dangerous. The company was still trying to prevent it from permanently damaging those affected when the bombs came down. I have trouble believing they wouldn't have fixed it after 22 years of testing. At the very least, they would likely have had to remove it from the market after 22 years of causing such injuries. The 22-year claim is potentially a lie intended to increase perceived legitimacy of their product. Not only is it likely a lie, but it's also not the only lie in the claim. I don't think anyone could reasonably claim hallucinogen gas is reliable crowd control. I've considered two other possibilities. HalluciGen gas was produced by a different company that was purchased by HalluciGen and named for the company, or Bethesda made a mistake. The mistake would not be without precedence in this content specifically. There are multiple points where the terminal entries make it seem like people were at HalluciGen's offices on Monday, October 25th, 2077. The war had already ended the world 2 days prior. The schedule on the CEO's terminal about the day is understandable. Meetings would have been planned in advance, so it's not out of the ordinary. Having demonstrated InvisiWave to an admiral on that day, though, is clearly out of the realm of possibility. These are internal reports not intended for the public, so there's no reason to lie about the date of the test. Of these possibilities, it seems more likely to me that this is either a lie by HalluciGen or a mistake by Bethesda, like the Starlight Drive-In being full of cars when the world ended on a Saturday morning when there would logically be no cars there. Second, Eric Rice was likely planning to turn the company's ethics officer into a test subject. As previously detailed, the company had a very unethical form of evaluating their products. Specifically, they would reel people in with a promise of payment for testing of non-lethal crowd control technology and a potential career in the industry. They would then drug the volunteers with sedatives and carry them into the test chambers. In Eric Rice's schedule, he mentions a 12:30 meeting with Dr. Everill to review the human subject's protocol. This line includes a note to offer the doctor water. The only potential reason I could see him putting this here is if he was considering getting rid of the ethics officer by making them into a test subject. He has plenty of other meetings scheduled that day. This is the only one that includes this comment, and it regards a subject that includes this drugged water. Third, there's a well-earned rail sign for danger at the entrance to the HalluciGen Inc. building. Fourth, there are many real-world examples of non-lethal or hopefully non-lethal crowd control technologies. The most well-known examples of these are things like pepper spray, tear gas, shotguns using pepper balls and beanbags, tasers, stun guns, and batons. Beyond this, there are directed energy weapons like heat rays, dazzlers, and long-range acoustic devices. Luckily, most of these are far less lethal than anything HalluciGen developed. Lastly, I think it's important to note that HalluciGen never delivered on anything they claimed. In their work to provide the government with tools to oppress its people, they committed countless acts of fraud that led to uncountable casualties. Alright, I think that'll do it for the story of HalluciGen Inc. Follow me on X for lore video announcements at Gaming with Maps. My Discord is open to the public, there's a link in the channel's banner. I stream every Friday evening on YouTube, come check it out if you're interested. If you appreciate what I do here and you want to support the channel financially, you can become a member on YouTube or a patron with Patreon. I want to thank my channel members and patrons Mesothelioma, 76 of Texas, Dark Malcontent, Real76, Dr. Orion, Samsung Smart Fridge, Night Spearhead, Ahotep, Despy, Chris G059, and Ricey41YT for their support. I also want to specifically thank Dark Malcontent for helping with this video's script. This has been the Resolute Cartographer. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.